Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Discus Lariat Collective Podcast. I'm your host, Warren, here with Glenn, as always. Gonna rattle off another quick fire top 5. Once again, sent in by my brother, because nobody gives a shit. And sending me fucking suggestions, but whatever. Anyway, so another one that he sent in was top 5 wrestling video games. I love this one. Glenn loves this one, I'm sure. Yeah, so it could be a very similar list, as we were discussing.
I reckon I will, I won't lie.
Yeah, fuck it. Anyway, it doesn't bother me. Either way, games are great, and wrestling games used to be creme de la creme.
Absolute king dick. This is, went and got some water, took a piss, and realised this is actually harder than it looks.
Yeah.
There's a top 5 that could just be Smackdown versus Raw games.
Exactly, yeah.
Fuck. Yeah. So I had to be as objective as possible and ignore all my nostalgic bias. So basically, if it was made after 2010, it's not in the list.
So we'll start us off then, will I, as usual?
Yeah, I mean, if the formula works, it's probably broken.
So let me see, top 5 wrestling games. To start off with number 5, I will go with Fire Pro Wrestling World. It's out on PC, PS4, stuff like that. It's the first Fire Pro game we played. I didn't play the older ones, that was all about Japanese wrestling, because I only got into Japanese wrestling, I'd say, over the last, 5, 6, max 7 years, if that. So yeah, when I seen Fire Pro Wrestling World come out, and it was licensed by New Japan, had all the New Japan guys, and it was done almost like 8-bit kind of arcadey job. I love the idea of it, got it, and realized how poxy difficult it is. But it's worth working at, you know what I mean? Because it actually is very rewarding.
I don't think you and I have played that game together in person the way we have with the other wrestling games. Yeah, it's enjoyable.
Yeah,
I think that's probably one of the most difficult wrestling games outside of an actual arcade game from the 80s or 90s.
Yeah, I'd well agree with that. It's poxy difficult. Let's see. Yeah, so Fire Pro Wrestling World will be number 5. Really like it. And then they have some class DLC. It had a GM mode, a manager mode DLC. They had where it plays a promoter. They have all the junior heavyweights, Liger and all the boys. So really good game. I like that. So that's number 5. Let me see. Number 4, I will go with WWE 2K14. I thought this was whopper when it came out. I thought it was amazing, and I didn't actually buy WWE 13. I got a lend of that off one of the lads, Wayne. Got a lend of that
Shout
first.
out to Wayne.
Shout out to Wayne Kelly. Listen to this podcast. Get on it. No, but
little bitch.
No, but so WWE 13, I actually got a lend off him, I think it was. Now, knowing this man's memory, he'll probably turn around and be like, no, it's actually WWE 12. But whatever, I think it was 13. But got a lend of 13 because I was like, I'm kind of gone off the wrestling games. And I liked 13, I really did. I loved 13. And then I was like, oh shit, I should have just bought it. And then when 2K14 came out, I think that was the first 2K game, I think it was.
That was released on your birthday, if I'm not.
Yeah, one of them were.
I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I got 2K14, and holy shit, they had the, what would you call it? A story mode kind of thing. But what it was 30 years of WrestleMania. So you played a match from each WrestleMania, and holy shit, it was just deadly. And then there was real life clips, and then you had to kind of reenact certain moments of it in game, and it was just deadly. Blew me mind. And then they had
I think 14 was one of the better of the 2K games, because after SVR 2011 it was 2012 or 2K12, and then that ran up all the way to about 6. Yeah, that ran all the way up to Jesus. What were we on? It went to 16 or 17, wasn't it? Before we had another Switch in development.
And
who was it took over recently?
No, what it was Ukes and THQ used to do them, and then it was just Ukes, and then THQ went bust a few years back. Then Ukes did it with somebody else. I can't remember who it was, but they did it, and they did instead of Smackdown versus Raw, they did just WWE 12 and WWE 13. Then 2K came in then in 2K14 for that one, and then they led the charge now all the way up till now. And then whoever was, I'm not sure if it was publisher or developer, someone new was coming in out this year for 2K22. Creative Solutions or something took it over last year, I think, or the year before. Or Digital Solutions,
wasn't it? Because 19 was good, but then, or was it 19 was bad?
No, 19 was good.
A mess.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, 19 was pretty good actually. That was actually going to take this spot from me, to be honest. It was going to take my fourth spot, because the universe mode was deadly. There was so many kind of cutscenes and little unlockables you can get. But I went to 14 because I felt like the universe mode was more fleshed out, as well as it didn't just have cutscenes for the sake of it, and it felt like you got different ones. You didn't always get the same ones. So that's why 2K14's taking my slot here. That universe mode was just fucking deadly, and they had a heap of titles in it because of the WrestleMania mode. They had all the titles. Do you know what I mean? So, and I'm a sucker for that one. I'm mad for making a show, and I'll have the old SmackDown logo, the old SmackDown stage, and then the big gold belt or something like that, or the universe, or Undisputed title and stuff. Yeah, or the big fist. Yeah, but yeah. So that's why 2K14's on it, and then I'll go to me number 3 then. I know this is probably going to be number 1 in a lot of people's thing, but I didn't have the console that this was on when it came out. So I played this in an emulator years later. So I'll go with No Mercy. It's going to be my number 3 slot, just because, as I said, I didn't have it. I didn't have it when it came out, so I didn't have that stars in your eyes kind of thing going on. I was like, oh, well, look, I have SmackDown. Do you know what I mean? I have SmackDown 1 or SmackDown 2, whatever was out at the time. Speaking of which, SmackDown 2 is going to be my honorable mention. And the only reason why that misses out on the top 5 is just because, like, don't get me wrong, the season mode was amazing. You could do as many years as you wanted, to the point where after you unlock people, they start just giving you unknown A, unknown Z, and it's just random blokes with a load of different creative parts on them. But I feel like, although I played the balls off it, I feel that apart from that season mode, it didn't really have anything else in terms of actual content. And I'm a sucker for content. Like, it has to have this, that, and the other. And don't get me wrong, I had great matches, and it's a nostalgia trip, and it's still great to play nowadays. But same with WCW Mayhem, but they just don't. These are 2 games that are going to take me top 2 are just too good. So yeah, number 3 would be No Mercy, and then number 2 would be Here Comes the Pain. I'm going to go SmackDown Here Comes the Pain as my number 2. The reason being, obviously, amazing, one of the best on the PS2 era. Roster wise, it was just savage. The season mode was class because it felt like you could get 1,000,001 different storylines. The unlockable section, that WWE shop section, was deadly. They kind of touched on it in SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, where you had to say, if you wanted to unlock Benoit in red bottoms, you had to win a match at, say, Insurrection, and then you could buy it. But there was 4 different things you could buy, and you'd only have enough for one thing. Do you know what I mean? You can only pick one yoke per pay-per-view. Yeah. So, I really like that. Here Comes the Pain is just deadly. And mechanics-wise, L2 to block strikes, or to block grapples became a staple then for years to come. So, yeah, Here Comes the Pain is number 2. And then my number 1 be SmackDown versus Raw 2007. Again, unreal roster. And the reason why I'm picking it, I'm going to hold it up. You can't see this, obviously, because it's an audio podcast, but I'm showing Glenn SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. But yeah, insane. I had the GM mode, which I love. Some people like the 2006 GM mode better. Some people like the 2008 GM mode better. I love 2007 because he didn't have the third brand of ECW, so there wasn't too many people to kind of pick from. Also, the whole popularity ratings, the match stars, star rating, and this, that, and it was just deadly. Like, and then the fact you could come down with injuries, you could offer trades. It was so complete, to the point where you don't get that in universe mode in modern games, even though it kind of touches on it, but you can't do trades. You have to just manually do it, and nobody says a word. Nobody bats an eyelid. Whereas back then, you genuinely had to trade for these wrestlers. You couldn't just put them on your show. Like,
you couldn't just steal them all. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then like graphics wise, it was the first one that came out on the 360, I believe. And I remember seeing like the sweat mechanics for the first time. Nearly had a shit fit. I was like, this is the best thing I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 will take my number 1 slot.
Nice. I love that. That's I thought our lists were gonna be less similar, or
more similar.
Just incredible. Like, when you do think about it, outside WWE games, there wasn't the greatest amount of scope. Like, 2 of my picks are clear. 3 of my picks are clear nostalgiables. Like, just not even, like, I'm not even gonna hide how, like, non-objective I am. There's substantially better wrestling games out there, but that was a good list. No major surprises. I genuinely thought I was gonna see Here Comes Pain number 1.
Yeah, no, SmackDown vs. Raw 2007, just solely for the GM mode. I think it has to go in there.
Yeah,
that's number 1. Yeah, for me.
So I suppose mine's gonna be a fairly, some equally short list. My honorable mention goes to SmackDown versus Raw, the first one, just because it was the first major shift in the dynamic of the SmackDown games in terms of what we got. And it was coming off the back of a better written version of the real life wrestling storyline of SmackDown and Raw getting its brand split. Obviously, Vince picked The Rock, and like we know how that story went. And I think the game kind of, there's a couple of games out there that I think were better than their real life counterparts. So to sidetrack a minute, the Warriors video game was just the Warriors film, but better. And it's very rare you get a game, like people are always like, oh, film or life adaptations of games are usually awful. And I intend to absolutely agree with that, except for a couple of rare exceptions. The Warriors game, the SmackDown wrestling games, and honorable mention goes to King Kong. Unreal. But SmackDown versus Raw as an honorable mention just needs to be shouted in there. Kicking off at number 5, going really, really way back. My very first ever wrestling game. Shout out to either one of the following, one of the O'Neills, Les Smith or David Brennan. I can't remember who got me this on the Sega or loaned it to me on like the Sega or one of the fucking consoles. Was the arcade port of WWF WrestleMania, where all I pretty much did was play as Doink the Clown and jump on people. Didn't know what the fuck I was doing, but it was just my first ever wrestling experience. So that has to go in at number 5, even if it is just a sucker for nostalgia. Number 4 has to go to, and I always mix up the names, the Game Boy version of either Attitude or Warzone. I can't remember which one was which.
Yeah.
I just remember playing this on the Game Boy for the first time ever, and like that, it was the evolution of from WrestleMania to that. Just the little adjustments in mechanics. The fact that I could play wrestling on the go was the big thing for me. Like if they ever made a, like we have Pokemon Go. If they ever made like a WrestleMania Go where you actually got to control them, I think that would be pretty fucking cool. Phones can mostly emulate everything pre-2002 anyway, so I don't see why we shouldn't get a modern version of one. Number 3 then is the opposite counterpart of that. It was the PS1. I think this was Warzone. I could be wrong, but I just distinctly remember having to input a cheat to unlock Austin. And when you started off on Expedition mode, the first person you saw was Bret Hart. And that's all I can remember about the menus. It could be Attitude. It's either Attitude or Warzone. Whichever one was the one that you loaded into the menu screen on PS1. And the first character you picked was Bret Hart. And you had to do a cheat code to unlock characters by holding down the back buttons, like L2, R2, L1, L2, all that, and you hold like left or something, and what would happen is you'd hear like a sound, and an elevator would take you down, and then you choose your unlockables and shit. Just reminded me of Mortal Kombat. It was Acclaim. I know Acclaim made it because 100% Acclaim, because it was before SmackDown. I'm fairly certain it was one of the first wrestling games on PS1.
It's Warzone or it's Attitude. It's one of them two.
It's absolutely has to be one of them. Someone hit me up with the fucking link to it, because I can't think of it. I'm gonna put my money down and say Attitude was the Game Boy and Warzone was the PS1, but they could have been parts of each other maybe.
They were both on PS1, but I think the one you were talking about though is Warzone, because I think Bret Hart was taken out there for Attitude the year after because of the screw job.
Okay, it could be that.
Yeah.
1997
thing is in Attitude, not, but Bret isn't, as far as I know. So it could be Warzone. Yeah.
Okay, so that's that. So again, a fairly lackluster, I'd say, list compared to some. So that's me 5 and me 4.
That's 3 as well, I think.
I mean, 3, yeah. So me number 2 spot. This was really hard because I have the nostalgia trip hard for Shut Your Mouth and Just Bring It, and it was nearly going to be Just Bring It actually, because the commentary I thought was was that the one that had commentary?
The really bad commentary. The Rock one,
the first commentary. Yeah, and it was awful, and I loved it. Just because of how
the Taz mission.
Just if anything, all of those get clumped together from SmackDown 2 up to Shut Your Mouth, get like one giant honorable mention. But the number 2 spot goes to SmackDown versus Raw 2007. Most of the reasons you touched on, I don't really need to jump into it, but it was also my first next gen wrestling game. And I'm fairly certain that's the last one I ever bought and or got heavily invested in, because every other one after that I played with you or I borrowed from you, or like if I had to, it was like one of the free ones or something. I can't even quite remember all the WWE games after that. And then my number 1, of course, it's Here Comes the Pain. The fucking NYC level, you pick Kane. I think it was Kane, in his alternate outfit, maybe. Whichever one he did the one-handed chokeslam in, you climbed the building and you chokeslammed off, or you picked Goldberg and you did his jackhammer, and by the time he was scooping them up, depending on the angle you got, you could legitimately have him scoop them and then jump off to hit the slam. And then lastly, you could get alternate 90s Undertaker, and he would hit the alternate tombstone, and he had them up, and then when he's dropping the knees and their head slams all the way into the concrete and they get a red head and the blood. Ah, here comes pain.
Game of blood as well.
Fucking love it. Yep.
Yeah, and the weight mechanic
fucking
as well.
love it. Yes, and where you like, if you were Rey Mysterio, you couldn't lift the Big Show, and like the way to win as a creative character was to make a 7'2" monster who weighed 500 pounds and make him do all the light heavyweight and lightweight moves. Yeah. As far as I'm aware, outside of like all the creation and all of the fucking like modularity behind it, was also had like one of the most stacked rosters, like
great roster
ever.
Yeah.
Just so good. You had fucking modern Taker, Triple H, Lesnar. Everyone who was good to go was in it. Music selection was unreal. Had the best versions of teams. So like, you could go on about that. Like, if they, I wouldn't say remastered. I'd say like it would need to be a balance between WWE 14 and like Here Comes Pain. But they could legit just remake that in nostalgia, and that would sell.
Oh yeah, absolutely it would. That's the thing. Like, it was such a well-made game. Such, as you said, like so many great things. like creation-wise as well. Like, as you said, great teams. And I don't know how many hours I spent like making wrestlers and then being like, do you know what, I'm going to give them Undertaker's music. And I'd be like, no, I'm going to give them this person's music. And then, like I was saying earlier to you, that I downloaded the definitive edition from that fella Scott J, and it's basically like an emulation of the PS2 one, but with all the characters that were taken out just before launch. So like Hogan, Jeff Hardy, Maven. So like, I can't wait to jump onto that, and I'm going to create myself, but I'm going to put Maven's music on it, because what a savage team. But
unreal.
Yeah, that's great top 5 though, in fairness. And when you were saying stuff about the Game Boy and all, straight away my mind went to on the Game Boy Advance, they had a game called Survivor Series. We had to save Stephanie McMahon. It was like a story mode game. It was really weird.
There was some ridiculous games made, but like, I guess the difference between the two of us is that I'll be your more nostalgia wrestling fan. Like, yeah, take me right back. Whereas I guess you're more like objectively critical of kind of where the improvements were and weren't. Like, why last year's WWE game will never ever make a top 10 list for you. Whereas like, you know, someone like me is just like, oh man, if it's made in the last 10 years, it'll never make a top 10 for me anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just like, I'm living in the heyday of it, and I hope people who listen to that get the good contrast that I genuinely objectively think Warren's list is better as a whole. But like, yeah, I lived on the PS2 and I lived on the PS1 and I lived on the Sega. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, that was your bread and butter.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But yeah, hell of a list as well though. But that's the thing. Yeah, wrestling games. Obviously, that's the good thing, I suppose. There's so many great ones that when it gets to a point where you're like, I cannot sit there and play one that came out in the past 10 years, as you said, you can easily go back and play one of them, and you'll sit there for hours because that's how good they were.
Absolutely.
But once again, then we'll call it quits here then, because we don't want to keep this too long. I mean, and we could talk about these wrestling games for fucking days. One of the days, actually, we should just jump on a podcast, or like, as I said, I'm going to be starting to bang up videos of me playing Here Comes the Pain, and we'll start streaming Smackdown vs. Raw 7 or something. But one of the days we'll make a video where we just chat about these kind of games or something, just in depth or whatever. But yeah, we'll call it a day on that then. Once again, absolutely, say cheers then to Ryan for sending that one in. And yeah, as usual, hit us up on the socials. The Discus Lariat on Twitter, Discus Lariat Collective on Instagram, and then wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Acast, give us a like, give us a follow. And until then, we'll see you next time.